Hello to you, my friend in life, my perhaps known, perhaps unknown companion, you being in the same boat as I am, us in the same boat of suffering and joy, of this pleasure and happiness. I am going to continue now my readings on the Avataṃsaka Sūtra, the Flower Adornment Sutra. The next verse from the one in the previous video, in chapter 14, the praise verses on the summit of Mount Sumeru. At that time, assisted by the awesome power of the Buddha, Supreme Wisdom Bodhisattva surveyed the 10 directions and then spoke these verses. The great wisdom of the Tathāgata is rare and without peer. It is such that no one in the entire world could even approach it merely through reasoning. Common people erroneously devote their contemplations to seizing on signs, thus not according with principle. Being entirely apart from all signs, the Buddha is not someone they are able to see. Those who are deluded and ignorant erroneously seize on the signs of the 5 aggregates, and fail to fully comprehend their true nature. Hence these people do not see the Buddha. Completely understand that all dharmas are entirely devoid of any inherently existent nature. If one understands the nature of dharmas in this way, then he will see Vairocana. It is because of previous instances of 5 aggregate existence that subsequent aggregates continue to arise. If one completely knows their nature, then one sees the inconceivability of the Buddha. Just as a jewel in the dark cannot be seen without a lamp, if there were no one explaining the Dharma of the Buddha, then even though they are wise, no one could fully understand it. And also, just as eyes with cataracts do not see pure and marvelous forms, in this same way a mind that is impure does not see the Dharma of all Buddhas. Also, just as the bright and clearly shining sun cannot be seen by anyone who is blind, so too, if one does not possess a wise mind, then one will never see the Buddhas. If one is able to rid oneself of such cataracts by entirely relinquishing forms and perceptions, thus not perceiving them in any dharma, then one will succeed in seeing the Tathāgata. As for what comprehensive wisdom stated earlier regarding the dharma of all Buddha's bodhi, due to having heard it from him, I have succeeded in seeing Vairocana. So again, more detailed commentary. First verse. The great wisdom of the Tathāgata, the thus gone one, the Buddha, is rare and without peer. It is such that no one in the entire world could even approach it merely through reasoning. Basic point. No one in the entire world can approach the wisdom of the Tathāgata, of the Buddha, solely or merely through reasoning. This is because reasoning is we could say, it's the discursive. Reasoning is, in some sense, it is not maybe inherently linguistic, but it's kind of close. Reasoning is about meaning attributions. It's about seeing things in a particular way, and kind of playing with ways of seeing, ways of looking, playing with perspectives. And but the wisdom, the dharma of the Tathāgata is in itself its emptiness. It's the kind of voidness of any inherent existence anywhere. Voidness of characteristics. It's the kind of recognition that everything is tathatā, like such as it is. It is just suchness. It has no characteristics. It has no distinctions. It cannot be modeled or approached through reasoning. It cannot be perceived through attributions of meaning, because it is the omission of all attributions of meaning, including meaninglessness. So of course a point I make very often in these videos and previously in other videos, emptiness has nothing to do with nihilism or nihilism in the sense of kind of seeing things as meaningless. because or non-existent. It's beyond these dichotomies. So, and that is it's a complete omission of all of these. That is what emptiness really is. In itself, it is not a view. It's beyond them. It's the skeleton key that kind of unlocks and dissolves all views. And this is experiential. It is not something one can kind of perceive through reasoning. Reasoning is always merely a finger pointing to the moon. The moon is experiential, and it has to be approached through personal experience, often very spontaneously arising experience. We cannot cause these kinds of insight experiences to arise just like that. There's no magic bullet that ensures the arising of such experiences. But as we practice, we make ourselves more prone. As Chuadasa, my first teacher, used to say, awakening is an accident, but meditative practice makes you accident prone. So, you are more prone for that. Your mind stream becomes more prone for the arising of the kind of insight experience that leads to some understanding of the great wisdom, the Dharma of the Tathāgata. Moving on. Common people erroneously devote their contemplations to seizing on signs, thus not according with principle. Being entirely apart from all signs, the Buddha is not someone they are able to see. So basically, this is close to the point I was just making. Common people, these are the uneducated worldlings. Most people erroneously devote their contemplations, what they think about, what they are focused on in life, what their attention is on, to seizing on signs. That's not according with principle. So the principle, we could say, I think it refers to the principle of emptiness and the principle of the Dharma. Not according with Dharma. They seize on signs, so they perceive the world solely through their perceptions of meaning. They believe their perceptions of meaning and their attributions of meaning. They believe in books and laptops and people, and they believe in right and wrong and so on. And although sometimes these views can be very beautiful to cultivate, like for example moral behavior, like very like Shila, moral behavior. It's a very beautiful thing. It's a very essential part, of course, of the kind of path that is in the Avataṃsaka kind of expounded, the Bodhisattva way. Of course, helping others, very, very central. But what it says is common people, they believe those signs and names. They don't kind of understand very well that phenomenal reality, rupa, the flow of phenomena, is in itself nameless and signless. It has no distinctions. No characteristics can be found. They can only be named, but they cannot be found. So people believe those names, and they live in worlds which are very heavily named names. They do not have experience with defabrication, and thereby they also do not have the liberation of free fabrication. In the vein of perceiving things as more beautiful and kind of applying views as skillful means. They are locked in place through their belief in truth, that their views are true. And this is why I often say that the truth is not our friend. Truth is a bit of an enemy, because when we believe something is true, we believe a view. It's for starters, I think it's quite hubristic. There's quite a bit of hubris there, because the world is so much larger than we are, and so much vaster. What we spring from is so much vaster. To kind of name it and believe that we're somehow saying something objectively true about it, I think is a bit hubristic. It's quite mysterious, ultimately. Tathatā, Dharmakāya, is very mysterious. Something that in Mahayana scripture is often also kind of emphasized. For example, that we cannot know the beginning and end of samsara, or why it is, why did it come about, and why it might end, if it ever ends. There's a lot of mystery there. Like the whole thing is kind of, we arise as, we could say, seemingly separate parts of this completely mysterious, incredible, this reality. It's what is it? It's magical. That's kind of That's positive fabrication. And if you're stuck, for example, in thinking, oh yeah, we know what the world is like, it's a materialistic, mechanistic universe and so on, blah blah. If you think all of that is true, and that you somehow, that you understand what, for example, theoretical physics actually means, if one believes in, we could say, like a very baseline scientific worldview of our times, thinks that there is such a thing as a scientific worldview, where actually I could say, as a bit of a philosopher of science, there really isn't, like a proper scientific worldview. Many of the things we take to be scientific, like the existence of matter, are things that science is not concerned with at all. Anyway, I digress. This verse again. Being entirely apart from all signs, the Buddha is not someone they are able to see. The Buddha is entirely apart from all signs. The Tathāgata, the thus gone one, the one gone into thusness or suchness, the one disappeared into suchness. The Buddha is entirely apart from all signs. Ultimately, in this kind of Mahayana sense, this is the Buddha. Suchness is the Buddha. The Buddha is not apart from suchness. The Buddha, like suchness itself, is signless and nameless, and that is correct in some sense. I am as well, and you are. We are both, as like in Chan or Zen, it's very often kind of said, there's no reason to look for the Buddha like outside of your own mind and yourself, because you are the Buddha. I am the Buddha. Of course, we are not the Buddha, because the Buddha is just a sign. There is no Buddha. But when we talk about the Tathāgata, and what the essential nature of the Buddha is, what the Buddha really is, the Buddha is silence. The Buddha is omission. The Buddha is tathatā, not distinct from it. And we also, not distinct from it. We are tathatā, we are suchness. In this sense, we could, if we go into a very poetic direction here, we could kind of apply something like the Johannine statement, ye are gods, in the Gospel of John. Ye are gods. We are suchness itself. We're not distinct from it. Waves of the ocean. Waves of the ocean. Moving on. Those who are deluded and ignorant erroneously seize on the signs of the five aggregates and fail to fully comprehend their true nature. Hence these people do not see the Buddha. Yeah, those who are stuck in delusion and ignorance, avidya, ignorance, they erroneously seize on the signs of the five aggregates. They believe in the five aggregates, perhaps, or they believe in, for example, something like sense domains. They believe in sanskaras or sankharas. They believe in their fabrications, their names and signs. And thus, as they believe in the signs and names they have been taught and that they apply themselves or have come up by themselves, they fail to fully comprehend the true nature of the aggregates and the objects arising in them. They fail to see their emptiness, the silence. They fail to see the forest for the trees, we could say. They think there are trees, but there's just a forest. Or they think there are waves or currents of water in the ocean, but ultimately it's just the ocean moving, rustling, tathatā, suchness. Hence these people do not see the Buddha. Again, the Buddha is tathatā. If someone is stuck on the signs of the Buddha, okay, how did the dude look like? What did he say? What was his characteristics? All of those, they are superficial. The Buddha, in many places, even in the Pali Canon, says, that do not focus on my characteristics. He's Tathāgata. He's the same as tathatā. He has disappeared into it, and he has no characteristics. They are mere appearance, whereas his nature is silence. Moving on. Completely understand that all dharmas are entirely devoid of any inherently existent nature. If one understands the nature of dharmas in this way, then he will see Vairocana. Completely understand that all dharmas are entirely devoid of any inherently existent nature. Yes, all phenomena, they don't arise. They don't exist. Appearance arises. So in that sense, we cannot really say that we cannot really say that it's true that they don't exist, but neither do they exist. There's no distinction can be found, no characteristics can be found, no blue, no red, no pink. We cannot find anything. No white, no sound, nothing. Nothing can be found. It's all arbitrary designations. It's solely by recourse to arbitrary designations that we speak of these things. Dharmas, phenomena don't arise because there are no dharmas, no separate dharmas, no separate phenomena. They have no inherently existent nature. This means they have no characteristics, none whatsoever. If one understands the nature of dharmas, phenomena, in this way, then he will see Vairocana. And here we have, like in these videos, the first, I think, instance where the name Vairocana appears. If one understands the nature of phenomena as empty and still and quiet, as omissive, as omission, they are not there, but appearance is there. One understands they're beyond all dichotomies. Then he will see Vairocana. Vairocana is the primordial Buddha in the Avataṃsaka Sūtra, the primordial mind. So Vairocana is Tathāgata. The Buddha is Vairocana. Vairocana is often said he's the Dharma body, the Dharmakāya of the Buddha. When, we could say that Siddhartha Gautama was the Buddha's kind of Nirmanakāya, manifestation body in some sense. Vairocana is his Dharmakāya, his Dharma body, and this is just tathatā itself. The primordial mind, the primordial Buddha, is just suchness itself. It is that primordial silence and omission. One who understands the nature of dharmas as beyond all dichotomies, as non-existent, as non-arising, as as indestructible, as unproduced, and so on. One will see in that stillness, in that suchness, one sees the primordial Buddha. We are all exactly like Vairocana. One sees one's own nature, and one sees the nature of reality, in the sense of phenomenal reality, we could say, as primordially silent, like space. Primordially nothing, like space. Without characteristics, like space. And that recognition, inward and outward, of this silence, that is Vairocana. It's the primordial mind. It's always been the same, and it will always be the same. The same essential nature, the same nothingness. Again, going a little bit more poetic, kind of probing into other traditions. It is the Tao. It's the Tao. And we can say it is God, this nothingness from which everything springs forth, in which everything appears, signless and nameless. Tathatā. We could call it God. And its behavior, its functioning, the function of karma, of cosmic conditioning, cause and conditions and so on, as God, or God's will even. Even if there is no personal God, even if it's not, even if tathatā is not personal in any way, we could still say it's the will of the Tao. It's how Tao flows, and we are just parts. And again, it is quite hubristic to shake one's fist at the heavens and question the flow of the Tao. Moving on. It is because of previous instances of five aggregate existence that subsequent aggregates continue to arise. If one completely knows their nature, then one sees the inconceivability of the Buddha. Yeah, the previous instance of five aggregate existence, this means belief in the five aggregates and their existence. Basically any Buddhist school of thought, the five aggregates arise due to dependent origination, and this has to do with fabrication. There's there's avidya, ignorance, and right from the second link, independent origination, is sankharas or samskaras, depending on the language. Fabrications, concoctions. One ignorantly believes that fabrications are true, and from that there arises this whole nama rupa, this whole world we live in, our lives, ourselves, everything, and our suffering, arise from this mistaken idea that our ideations and our names, culturally conditioned, egocentric, anthropocentric, arbitrary, that they are somehow correct about reality. Now, this is the primordial mistake. This is where dependent origination starts. this avidya, this ignorance. And so, when one believes in five aggregate existence, the subsequent aggregates continue to arise. It keeps on going. Dependent origination goes on, fabricates and constructs the five aggregates again and again. The sense domains, like the six sense bases, everything, all of it suffering, all of it fabricates it again and again. If one completely knows their nature, then one sees the inconceivability of the Buddha. So if one completely knows again the nature of the five aggregates, the same as with phenomena, again still, omission, quiet, silence, space, one sees the inconceivability of the Buddha. So the Buddha, one sees the Buddha and one sees that the Buddha is the moon. Tathatā is the moon. Emptiness is the moon. It is inconceivable. Conception, it cannot be conceptualized. It cannot be thought through. It cannot be conceived in this kind of intellectual sense. But it can be understood. This is different. It can be understood. When one sees it, one just sees. Tathatā, yes, I recognize. I see what you mean. I see what you mean, what you are pointing at. I do not see your meaning. I see what you mean. And that is the Buddha. Again, Vairocana. That is the Tathāgata. That is the primordial mind. That is primordial silence, quiescence. Just as a jewel in the dark cannot be seen without a lamp, if there were no one explaining the Dharma of the Buddha, then, even though they are wise, no one could fully understand it. But this is just like a nod or an homage to the Sangha. It is very difficult to realize these things alone. In a culture, in a world where no one teaches the Dharma or speaks about these things, where no one points at the moon. Everyone just looks at the finger, and the fingers, and their kind of shadow dance on the wall, like in Plato's cave, there are like the shadows that are cast on the walls, and the prisoners in the cave, they only see the shadows and think they are real. People, if one is born in a world in a time where everyone just believes, their conditioned, ways of looking, then even though they might be wise in a relative sense, they would never fully understand the Dharma. They would never really look at the moon. So we need the Sangha. So homage to the Sangha. Great blessings on the Sangha. Great gratitude to the Sangha. I would never have understood any of this without books, without teachers, without the Sangha, without the transmission of that wisdom through these various means. The lamp in the dark, shining on the jewel, revealing the jewel, the moon. So one can see. Moving on. And also, just as eyes with cataracts do not see pure and marvelous forms, in this same way a mind that is impure does not see the Dharma of all Buddhas. So a mind that is impure, if the mind is very restless, the hindrances are there, the asavas, the outflows are there, the defilements, there's greed and aversion and delusion and so on, all of it is rampant. The mind is completely, all over the place. It will also, it will not have, much like a mind in the hells, does not have the chance to understand the Dharma. They cannot see it because they're too mixed up in their own ways of looking, their own sufferings, which we could call, all the suffering that arises, we could say, from that kind of impurity, from the outflows, from the anusayas, the latent tendencies of the mind towards suffering and delusion. It is, of course, not impure in any absolute sense. No, not even in the Avataṃsaka. No, it's very clear. The metaphysics here, like the idea here, is that everything is pure, because everything is nothing. But the nothing itself is not nothing. It's appearance. It's, again, in the Tibetan sense, it's emptiness that is illuminated. That illuminates itself. It arises as illumined appearance, as light of various kinds. It appears, yet it is empty. But a mind that is very mixed up and restless cannot see this. Moving on. Also, just as the bright and clearly shining sun cannot be seen by anyone who is blind, so too if one does not possess a wise mind, then one will never see the Buddhas. So here, as the bright and clearly shining sun cannot be seen by anyone who is blind. If one is like, even though the sun of the Dharma, the tathatā, Dharmata, the moon, it's immediately present in every moment. It's always there. It's always there. It's always here. If one does not possess a wise mind, one will never see this. One will never understand this tathatā. One will never look at the moon in this way. So one needs to possess a wise mind. It's a pure enough mind. It's a calmed enough mind. It has enough insight to finally grasp it. Finally grasp this and relinquish perhaps its ideas of truth, its ideas of success, its ideas of security and refuge. So taking refuge in the unconditioned. Does not have to be the unconditioned of nirodha samapatti. It doesn't have to be the unconditioned nature of cessation. This too, there are two things there that are unconditioned. Cessation or nothingness in that sense. But also the totality, everything, tathatā, as it arises. It's unconditioned. It has no characteristics. We don't know if it has ever had a beginning or if it ever has an end. It's always the same. It's always just tathatā. It's always this space, this silence. It's always just this quiescence. It does not change. It does not change, as is made also clear in this book later on. It does not change at all. There's no transformation. Dharmas, again, have no function. They don't do anything. Nor do they arise or are destroyed. There are no dharmas. There's just the same tathatā. So that is also unconditioned. So one can then take refuge in the unconditioned, in the totality of everything, and its primordial perfection in being so free, in that quiescence. Moving on. If one is able to rid oneself of such cataracts, the impurities, by entirely relinquishing forms and perceptions. So these are the ideas about the world. Perceptions are kind of recognitions of different kinds of samskaras or sankharas. Different kind of like perceptions here. Like perception means, the kind of faculty of connecting one's fabricated ideas and conceptualizations about reality with one's phenomenal experience. So, for example, recognizing book. That is that's recognition. Book. That's sanya. Or sanya. That's perception. And kind of, if one has to entirely relinquish the idea that such perceptions are accurate or correct in any way. And one has to also relinquish forms, which means, I think here, basically phenomena. It does not mean that just kind of the flow of becoming itself, rupa in that sense, form in that sense, but forms in the plural. So kind of, I would say, relinquishing distinctions in phenomenal reality, relinquishing the idea that somehow there is something like red and blue, and there's something like, the Pepsi logo, as in my shirt, and so on. Thus not perceiving them in any dharma, in any phenomenon, then one will succeed in seeing the Tathāgata. So again, if one kind of relinquishes these, one will see the primordial mind. One will see oneself as the Tathāgata, as Vairocana. One will understand, yes, all of this, both inward and outward, all of it is Vairocana. All of it is primordial Buddha mind, Buddha nature. All of it is just the Tathāgata, the Buddha. There's nothing but the Buddha, because the Buddha is nothing. The Buddha is tathatā itself. There's nothing but tathatā. There's nothing but dharmata. There's nothing but the Buddha. And final verse. As for what comprehensive wisdom stated earlier, so this is in my previous video in this series, comprehensive wisdom. There's a nod to the previous kind of bodhisattva, comprehensive wisdom, who also had a set of verses. As for what comprehensive wisdom stated earlier, regarding the dharma of all Buddha's bodhi, of all Buddha's awakening, due to having heard it from him, I have succeeded in seeing Vairocana. This is just an homage, a nod. Comprehensive wisdom, bodhisattva, due to having heard of the the dharma of all Buddha's awakening, the teaching of all Buddha's awakening, the teaching of this omission, this quiescence, of this nothingness that is yet not nothing, nor is it something, this complete collapsing of all kind of truth, all kind of truth values in our propositions, our ideas about reality. Regarding this teaching, Supreme Wisdom Bodhisattva, the author of these verses, has heard of it from Comprehensive Wisdom Bodhisattva, and due to having heard it from him, he has succeeded in seeing Vairocana, seeing the primordial Buddha mind in himself, in other things, everywhere. So that's it for today. Thank you again for listening or watching if you did so. I will continue the series regularly for the foreseeable future. I mean, of course, again, the text is 2,400 pages long. There's going to be a lot to comment on. And again, I like this. I think this is, for me, it's a good insight practice. A wonderful day, night, evening, whatever to you. And may your time be blessed, my friend. May it be full of beauty and harmony. May it be joyful. May it be pleasant abiding here and now. May all beings be happy. May we together contribute as like ants, but like joyful, loving, purposeful ants, embracing their purpose. May we contribute together to the happiness and success, all beings everywhere. Sukino vakemino hontu, sabbe satta, bhavantu sukitatta. Be well. See you.